In August 1975, a structural collapse in central China killed between 170,000 and 240,000 people. It remains the deadliest engineering failure in human history. Yet for 30 years, the outside world knew absolutely nothing about it. The roots of the disaster lie 2 decades earlier. Following severe floods in the early 1950s, Mao Zedong launched the Great Leap Forward, a massive, aggressive campaign to build dams across the country. China lacked the domestic engineering infrastructure for projects of this scale. They relied almost entirely on technical advice from the Soviet Union, executed by vast armies of manual peasant labor. Political quotas demanded rapid results. Local officials equated retaining water with revolutionary success, creating a culture where aggressive construction schedules heavily outweighed basic safety protocols. The Banqiao Dam stood 80 feet tall, built with a central clay core and massive sand shell. Reinforced to Soviet specifications, it was dubbed the Iron Dam. Engineers calculated it to withstand a 1,000-year flood, safely holding 20.9 inches of rainfall over 3 days. One of China's foremost hydrologists, Chen Xing, observed these developments with alarm. He warned that the state's obsession with retaining water for irrigation left the reservoirs completely unprepared to discharge extreme floods. Chen recommended installing 12 sluice gates on the Banqiao Dam to ensure adequate discharge capacity. The government rejected his assessment as excessive, reduced the design to just 5 gates, and fired him from the project for being anti-Soviet. Engineering mechanics were made subordinate to ideological purity. The region was left with dozens of rigid, heavily restricted reservoirs, waiting for a storm they could not handle. This map tracks the trajectory of Typhoon Nina in early August 1975. The storm made landfall and moved inland, but instead of dissipating, it collided with a cold front. Nina stalled, locking into a stationary position directly over Henan Province. Overlaying the rainfall data on this chart reveals the scale of the anomaly. The storm dropped 42 inches of rain in just 24 hours. That single day's volume exceeded the region's total average precipitation for an entire year. Isolating the most intense window of this churn shows something even more extreme. In a single 6-hour span, the storm released 32.7 inches of rain, setting a global meteorological record. Meteorologists classify a storm of this magnitude as a 1 in 2,000 year event. It delivered roughly double the absolute mathematical design limit of the Iron Dam. The structure was no longer being tested by the elements. Its failure was now just a matter of capacity and time. By the night of August 8th, the reservoir was completely full. Flooded switchboards and downed telegraph lines left the local dam operators isolated from the outside world and upstream weather stations. Operators scrambled to manually open the 5 remaining sluice gates to release the pressure. They found them jammed, choked by years of accumulated river silt. The secondary spillway was too small to handle the massive overflow. At 1 a.m., the water crested the top of the wave protection wall, washed over the sand embankment, and the entire structure gave way. Nearly 700 million cubic meters of water emptied in 6 hours. A 30-foot-high, 6-mile-wide wall of water tore down the valley at 30 miles per hour, instantly obliterating the downstream town of Dawenqing. As we see on this topographical map, the destruction multiplied. The initial breach from Banqiao and the upstream Shimontan Dam sent a massive wave radiating down the river system, systematically overwhelming and destroying 61 additional dams. This was the collapse of an entire regional infrastructure network, failing exactly as its ousted engineers had warned. In the immediate darkness of that night, roughly 26,000 people drowned in the floodwaters. Millions of survivors were left stranded across the submerged plains. For weeks, they endured extreme midsummer heat, with no shelter, food, or clean drinking water. The stagnant water bred disease. Infections and severe famine quietly claimed well over 100,000 additional lives in the immediate aftermath. The Chinese government responded by militarily sealing off the entire region. They refused offers of international aid. and classified the death toll and the dam collapses as strict state secrets. Acknowledging the disaster meant acknowledging the failure of the Great Leap Forward's engineering programs. The state prioritized its geopolitical reputation over the survival of its own citizens. 30 years passed before the government declassified the historical records in 2005, finally allowing the outside world to understand the true scale of the catastrophe. In a bitter twist of historical irony, the authorities eventually brought hydrologist Chen Xing back to help clear the rivers and redesign the basin's water systems. He never received an apology. Today, the Banqiao Dam has been completely rebuilt on the Ru River, yet the valley itself holds no major public memorial for the 170,000 people who died there. The modern concrete dam stands over a quiet valley. It serves as a permanent, silent reminder of the human cost when arrogance overrules physical reality.